Breaking news and a massive update for the Ripple and XRP community as we are in the process of a historic global takeover. Well, Ripple and XRP are in the process of replacing SWIFT. And today, during this exclusive Paul Barron podcast, we break down why companies like Amazon, Apple, and Uber are going to be leveraging the Ripple technology under the Donald Trump administration. We're also going to break down how the United States government is beginning to endorse the idea of blockchain. Working firsthand with many of our favorite companies, such as Stellar, Ripple, and HBAR, we're going to show our listeners why this asset class is just beginning here in 2025. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Good Evening Crypto, your favorite crypto news related channel. You are going to want to stick around to the end of the episode as we give our listeners some exclusive insights into how they can be successful during this once in a lifetime crypto bull market. Be sure to stick around to the end of the video. Let's dive right in. You know what's awesome about this whole thing is that, and I shared this many times, back in 2021, the exact topics that we were speculating on, they're happening right now in 2025. The ETFs, the Clarity Act, the adoption, the tokenization, it's all happening right here, right now. So I'm excited that we broke this live on air here. It's pretty awesome.
Well, the XRP podcast is part of that group. And this usually is the channel where people are coming into crypto for the very first time. They're starting to learn about certain things. Then they find out a little bit about Ripple and what's been going on there. In most cases, if they've been following financial news at all they have heard is bad things. You know, that right. Ripple's the bad guy, the SEC went after them. You know, that's the typical cocktail party message that is out there. However, we hold a seminar every couple of weeks here in South Florida, and it's mostly high net worth individuals. And one thing that happened in our last seminar that was done, most of the time it's all Bitcoin talk and how do you hold it? You know, how do you go buy it? The issue that is very rudimentary. And then finally, last week, and I never pitch tokens. This is all about, I always talk about the two classes, only two assets, and that's Bitcoin, Ethereum, because it's what is mostly in the news. So people can grab it quickly. And then XRP came up for the first time. And I've been doing this for 18 months. The first time XRP ever was announced in that room was by someone asking a question about it. And I said, oh boy, have you just opened a can of worms. And it began the journey. And before, I mean, we were halfway through the seminar and everybody was like, just, oh my God, you know, I want to talk about nothing but this now, you know? So what is your opinion when you look at new people coming into the market comparing Bitcoin and XRP? Because they're trying to wait it out. How do you guys kind of explain it?
You know, what's interesting, what I found to be successful for my own, and I'll take this a different direction and come back to the initial question. What I've found for successful investors in the crypto environment is they aren't over diversified. And this is something that I actually learned through my own experience was having 20 different projects with 20 different narratives. People think it gives you a better chance of success. You actually end up with more losers. So what I would say to the average crypto investor is go with what you understand. Bitcoin, it's a store of value. It's digital gold. It's clearly going to be given a free pass by the United States government. Maybe we'll even wake up a few months from now, Paul, if we're lucky, and the United States government's going to be going out and buying some Bitcoin. There are a lot of rumors out there about that. But the thing that's different between the XRP ledger and Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is anti-bank, anti-traditional system. Yeah. That's the number one narrative that this ran on. The XRP ledger is improving banking and improving modern settlement. So whether you're pro-bank or not, I think everybody can agree that the banking system is here to stay. And if you believe that the banking system is going to evolve into the 21st century, it's going to need a product like Ripple and XRP. That would be my simple pitch.
Yeah, and I think people start to understand the banking system, and if they're in business, they already get it because they've probably used cross-border payments. They've already used SWIFT or some sort of ACH. They understand the slowness, the fees, all that concept. When you explain to them what Ripple is in terms of a true payment company, they start to understand, wait a minute, this is like the next generation Plaid, the next generation PayPal, the next gen. And I said, in simple term, yeah, but this is talking about institutional moves, you know, and that is the big difference here, which I think a lot of people, you know, still point to SWIFT as, you know, kind of the big factor that Ripple could really take a hold of. And I still believe, even though, you know, Garlinghouse is on record saying they only think they're going to take a short percentage of SWIFT, I still believe it's going to be significant in terms of when that switch goes off, which is only going to drive, you know, the ledger to a new height in terms of where we'll see, which is one of the reasons I'm so bullish on XRP. But beyond that, and you look at the conversation we had on the X space this week, and Brad Kimes and I were talking about this, and the point is, do you feel that XRP is a white hat, a black hat, or a white hat that is a black hat?
I love it. Almost feels like a trick question in a sense.
It is.
You know what's funny is that we can just look at the data and the math. Every day, Amazon, and this is just one particular company, does over $6 billion in total volume. We did the math yesterday. They could save $40 million every single day. That is daily by just using a modern settlement system like Ripple offers. You apply the same concept to Google. You apply the same concept to Uber. This should affect every single business in the American economy that plans on operating here in the 21st century. And so when you say, is it a white hat or a black hat? I think for the newer investors, it may be a little bit misleading. When you focus on the technology, it's inevitable, whether it's a Hedera, a Stellar, or an XRP, these companies need a product like Ripple offers. And I think we're starting to see that come to fruition right now in 2025.
Yeah, and I think this is a factor that everybody has to kind of understand in terms of a financial shift. I was listening to Tom Lee talk about this. He's a Wall Street super investor, but he has become a crypto guy, now mostly known for BMNR, which is an Ethereum digital asset company, holding treasury company called DATS out there. The interesting point he made was that he believes the financial system, and this is something, I grew up in tech, so I've seen these cycles appear over the last 2 decades, 3 decades now. He believes that the financial system is getting ready to see a renaissance and become as volatile and opportunistic as the tech sector. So whether it's a JP Morgan, a Ripple company, many of the companies that we're seeing rise out of the crypto space, they could easily become literally hundreds of billion-dollar companies, possibly our first trillion-dollar company in this new service area. Do you think that is going to be the case? I'm kind of curious.
I completely agree. And you brought up an interesting stat earlier where Brad Garlinghouse had predicted by the year 2030, Ripple and the XRP ledger would absorb 14% of SWIFT payments. Think about the daily transaction volume. That is $700 billion every single day just from that 14% of SWIFT alone. You factor in tokenized assets, you factor in stablecoin usage. And I'm sure you saw the article this morning where RLUSD is going to go live in Japan starting in Q1 2026. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw corridors all around the world, the UAE, Europe, maybe even South America, opening up these brand new stablecoins and providing more and more demand for the underlying asset in XRP. And I know you've had conversations with Jay Claver, Dom and Phil from the EZA app. These are very smart, very accomplished individuals that are publicly stating $1,000 XRP is possible by the year 2030. And it's not just those guys. Patrick Bet David actually came out about 6 months ago, and he produced a video explaining how if Ripple were to do the volume that SWIFT does today, it would be absolutely necessary for the XRP token to be over 4 digits. So there's a lot of different narratives going on in the background, but if we just focus on the facts, it's tokenized assets, that's $20 trillion. It's the stablecoin market, potentially $4 trillion. It's the ETF product set to be approved, another $1 trillion coming from Wall Street into these crypto products by the year 2030. You look at the demand that's there, that's nearly $25 trillion. And then you look at the order books, there's not $25 trillion worth of digital assets for sale. So if $25 trillion in demand comes into this market, we could be looking at a crypto asset class that's 50, 75, $100 trillion in total market cap by that time.
Yeah, and I don't think people really understand the transition. And I fortunately got to live through the dot bomb. And I also got to live through the era of podcasting rising. And in both of those situations, I was told by all of my friends, family, and colleagues that this would never happen. These are crazy times, never going to be the case. And this is something that I think we are in a cycle. It is a super cycle that we have literally just begun. Now that Wall Street has finally come to the party, I think it only validates it because it brings the regulatory framework in it. Obviously, we've seen that with President Trump and what he's doing. And now you're looking at a setup, because you saw the clip from Trump last week where he basically said Ripple's going to take over the financial system. I mean, he basically said that without saying it. He said, hey, we have an antiquated system out there. Crypto is going to do it, and we know that's not going to be Bitcoin. All right, let's just be clear. We love Bitcoin as a store of value, and it's a shame that there's a lot of people out there who believe that it's going to be a payment system, but it's not. It doesn't have the speed, doesn't have the architecture, and it definitely doesn't have the infrastructure connectivity. Now, granted, can it be moved? Yeah, sure. Not in the speed and requirement level that we need for running the world's financial system. So that is a big deal. What about this whole idea of gold and Bitcoin becoming the backstop for the US dollar? What's your theory?
Here's my opinion on Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin has a place in this market, but as the Clarity Act is passed later this year, I think there's going to be a rapid evolution. And you described it as a super cycle. I think Bitcoin's biggest advantage here, and we can focus on Ethereum and come back to Bitcoin because they play off one another. The reason that Ethereum is the second largest market cap in crypto today is two narratives: stablecoins and smart contracts. Now, this is my personal opinion because there's also the free pass that was given inside the United States by these regulators. But look at Bitcoin. No smart contracts, no stable coins, no ability to transact in a fast, cheap, scalable way. So there's a glass ceiling. I would even call it a cement ceiling on what Bitcoin is. You have the Michael Saylors out there who are going to go out and purchase this asset to hold it as a digital gold, but nobody spends gold in the grocery store. Nobody buys their home in gold. There is still a huge opportunity for a project like an XRP, which I'm an XRP-centric program. I've been studying this project for the better half of a decade. I can see that the building blocks have already been laid through the connections globally. 1,700 NDAs, 300 public companies, and 26 central banks working with Ripple right now. We're waiting for that onboarding process. And Paul, I think you'll like this analogy. I've often described what's happening in crypto as boarding a plane, right? The first class passengers get on, then it's rows 1 through 7, then it's 7 through 14. We're in that onboarding process right now, but they just called first class members. There's probably one person in their seat as we speak. As this entire asset class starts to onboard into the assets that we're talking about, it's going to be really difficult to tell people they're early when it's 2028 and XRP's triple digits. But that's genuinely where I believe we're going. And that's why I don't fall into the camp where I think Bitcoin will be this backing of the digital financial system. I think these emerging technologies may end up being more important.
We had a podcast that I'm questioning whether I'm going to air it. And the reason was because it was so explosive. Some of the things that were said in it, if we cut those things out, it wouldn't make the podcast would not make sense. But I'm going to give you guys a summary of what the challenge was. And it was I won't say an anti-Bitcoiner or an anti-crypto person, but it was a person who has been in the financial business, and he's also a fellow tech guy that I respect and have known for many years. And he basically, we had the conversation of, he said, Paul, crypto is backed by the US government. Bitcoin is probably an NSA project. Most likely, this is just a matter of time before, the powers to be at B that are going to simply say, okay, we got it from here. Okay. What is your theory on that position of how there are real cognizant, I think, and people that have heavy validity in the market, a lot of respect, that are now starting to point in that direction that this is a psyop, crypto in general?
I vehemently disagree. And here's the reason why. You can't have a global economy with a bunch of borders. And we need technology to overcome these borders. Now, obviously, I'm an American. I'm pro-border here. And let's make no mistake about it. But the truth of the matter is that we're going into a global economy where Amazon does just as much business offshore as it does onshore. So even if you're anti-central bank digital currency, which I am, or you're even anti-digital assets, which I am not, I think you have to look at the necessity here for a global payment system that can scale all across the world without being affected by a singular particular government or a singular particular economy.
Bingo.
That's where I believe we're going in a very simple manner.
Well, and here's the thing. Okay, so we and I want to kind of bounce this off because I fall on your side of the argument. And in having this discussion with him, we went down the rabbit hole of the internet, and we went down the rabbit hole of new media. And I simply said, his question and statement was to me, Paul, do you really think that the families, the Rothschilds and the many others that pretty much control the globalist system and have for decades, possibly over 100 years, do you really going to think they're going to let that occur? That that a new financial system is going to rise? And I'm like, listen, they attempted to control the internet. We know that that was a government sanctioned project. It got uncontrollable, and look at it now. Then guess what? You had mainstream media that attempted to control the narrative. And what happened? Podcasting literally put a president in the White House. And it has completely gotten out of hand. And I think crypto, yeah, maybe at one time there might have been some DARPA and some NSA projects that were early. It's very possible some projects were actually built there. But now that it's out of the bag, the toothpaste is out. And I just know at this point, I think it's too big to fail. And I think the complexity of it has started to splinter off because of the openness of these networks, that it's literally unstoppable now. No matter who you are and how much money you have, it's not going to be thwarted. Would you agree with that?
Not only would I agree with that, I could actually add to it. I think the US government needs crypto to be successful, because what are we seeing right now with stablecoins?
Yep.
The demand for treasury bonds. These ideas play off one another. And let's just make it point blank and simple for people. If the powers that be couldn't win the war on information, I don't think they're going to win the war on finances in the long run.
No way.
They don't want guys like Paul doing a podcast that's unscripted. They would love a media-trained, official person that they fully control and understand to be sharing this message. That's not what took place. And I can speak for myself as well, because I've had to overcome those allegations over the years. People think if you turn a camera on, you speak into it, maybe it's a government psyop, maybe you're controlled. Absolutely not. I'm a middle-class American, just like everybody who's probably watching the show. And I study this stuff every day, so much so that I said I want to share this message. So in response to what you've stated, there's a couple of different narratives that are important. Number one, this benefits governments and it benefits banking in the long run. If this gets in the hands of the right people, we're already seeing JP Morgan capitulate. We're already seeing Bank of America capitulate. We saw BlackRock capitulate on the Bitcoin narrative. It's the other side of this coin, which is that if they were going to stop this asset class from growing, it wouldn't be $4 trillion today. And we witnessed the full-blown war on crypto take place here inside the United States. The XRP army felt that firsthand. This was an asset that was trading at 70 cents in November of 2020, sued by the SEC, came down to 17 cents, still rallied for an 11x over 4 months, going from 17 cents to $1.90 in April in the midst of a lawsuit against the US government. Now, me and you are doing this podcast Friday in August, and what do we see on the horizon? We have the Clarity Act. We have the ETFs. The lawsuit is over, and we are in the midst of a super cycle like you've just predicted, which could lead to more capital coming into this market than we've ever seen before. So I think there's a message of hope, people, for the contrarians out there. If you cannot beat them, join them. Stack your pennies next to their dollars, and that's what we've implemented here.
Well, exactly. And, you know, we did a show this week. I'm going to bring up the channel. And it was this show right here. It was this one that I'm kind of hovering around. I'll zoom in on it here for you guys to take a quick look. One thing that was focused on in that show right there, called Checkmate, was the first thing, that the issue was that China was starting to move to a stablecoin approval. And the reason is because the amount of opportunity now for the US dollar to literally be exported like a commodity around the world via stablecoins. And with this export, you're talking about growing the amount of exposure to backstop, because every stablecoin gets a treasury reverse asset. And to your point that you were getting to, is that this starts to create a real problem for the Chinese, because it removes the, I guess to a certain extent, the issue right now that we're walking on thin ice with the treasury and the bond market. Especially if you know, Jake and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago about the reverse carry trade. You know, if Japan implodes, many people think there's going to be a problem over there. Even if that were to happen because of the export of now the US dollar, the treasuries are almost not going to have an opportunity to fail, even if you did have a massive move into the market. So to your point, yeah, the US government is going to need this. Then they're going to need the payment rail system to accommodate it, which is where we're going.
And it's not just me and you who share this opinion, Paul. It's actually Scott Bessent. Let's look at the Treasury Secretary for the United States, who has said, we are going to use stablecoins to increase demand for US Treasury bonds. And we're going to use this to expand US dollar dominance all across the world. They told us the playbook. We don't have to be conspiracy theorists anymore. Let's just listen to the people who are in charge, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny. All the conspiracy theories seem to always kind of come true, don't they? It's a conspiracy theory. I usually just say is an early warning sign.
Right.
It's the early warning sign. to pay attention to what's going on out there.
I was going to say, Paul, you know what's really obvious to me is that people overestimate the impact of these short-term narratives, and they underestimate the impact of the market overall. You said it at the beginning of the episode. We are at the beginning of this entire journey. And whether Jerome Powell decides to delay the cutting of rates for another 6 weeks or he does it in September, one thing is absolutely clear. There is nothing stopping the success of digital assets here inside the United States. So here's my take. Don't overemphasize what's happening, especially for newer investors in the short term. Instead, look at the catalyst that we've already talked about. The Clarity Act, which will clearly define what's a security and what's a commodity in the US for digital assets. 19 different ETF products for XRP. There's also Solana, Litecoin, HBAR, Doge, Cardano. All these ETF filings could be approved in October. Then we're going to have those inflows turned on. So I think these narratives are much more important. And here would be my last point. Every single bull market, 2013, 2017, and in 2021, to make it simple, we got a rally in July and August, a short-term correction in September, and euphoria enters the market in October, November, and maybe in early December. If you look at where we are today, it's playing out fairly similar.
Yeah. Well, and to the point that I think you're getting at is long-term strategy on any asset class, whether you're in traditional securities and stocks, or if you're in real estate, even if you're in gold and silver. Most of the great investors will tell you the longer you hold, the better you are. You know, it's that simple. It's not rocket science, and everybody thinks it is. And I'm like, no, just follow the crumbs. Follow the crumbs.
There's a great quote out there from, I think it's Dan Pena, if you've ever watched some of his content. He said, anybody can get rich if they're willing to wait 7 years. Same narrative applies to crypto. I mean, anybody who bought Bitcoin 10 years ago, this was a $250 asset. That's $110,000 today on a pullback. I think that speaks for itself. And when you think about some of these XRP price predictions, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we woke up a few years from now, Paul, and hopefully we're doing another podcast together. And we're talking about, can XRP reach $1,000? It's on a pullback today down to 120. What do you think? Right? And I'm waiting for those questions. So I think anybody who has the patience to stomach the volatility, sit in this asset class for 5, 6, 7 years, not only are you going to have a huge chance at success, you may end up being more successful than you predict.
And XRP, I think, is one of those that falls prey or falls to the advantage of the attention side of it. Do you think that is a measurement that is good to track in crypto?
I really do. I fall into the camp that one of the best parts about XRP is the community. Now, I know it may sound a little cliche because people say you need the tech, you need the leadership, you need the partnerships. Of course, those essential pillars are really important. But I think the icing on the cake for the XRP community, and Paul, you probably know this talking to thousands of people over the years, is that most of these investors aren't here for $10. Most of them aren't here for $100. These are investors that are willing to stake their portion in the future of finance, and they don't care how long they have to wait. They believe they're sitting on $1,000 asset. So people who have that mindset that not only do they want to build on this technology, they're not in this for the short term, they're here to stay. I think that's only going to work in their favor over these next 10 years.
We have an algorithm that basically pulls out the chaff on, especially off of crypto Twitter, because there's a lot of bots on crypto Twitter. And one of the few assets that are not bots, at least that we have found in a tech that we've spent almost a decade building, is XRP. It's like, these are real people. The bot traffic actually comes from some of the assets that you would never believe it would come from. So what is your opinion on that? Do you think that the community is the reason that we're seeing XRP hold as the number 3 asset right now?
I actually fall into the camp of XRP being undervalued at $3. And I can outline why and come back to the community aspect of this. Back in 2021, we were at the beginning of the bull market and XRP was 70 cents in value. Sued by the SEC, lost a huge portion of the market, went down to 17 cents. We started our bull run from there. So I just played the hypothetical game. Imagine, and I'm sure we would have climbed higher, but if we started that exact same bull market around 72 cents and added $1.90 onto that, we break all-time highs back in 2021 and we're in price discovery. So I think that we're actually at what should be bear market prices right now in a market euphoria moment. And I think we're only going to build on that as evolution comes into this space.
Well, I mean, it is a technology that has been done. I mean, I shouldn't say a technology, a tactic. Well, in a way, it's a tech that has been done by Silicon Valley for a while. And, you know, it was one of the reasons there were some things that happened in Silicon Valley, and probably one of the main reasons of why I left and got away from it. And I see some of that happening now in crypto, is that because we're entering a phase much like what we were in 1997 through 1999, where major companies were starting to get an influx of cash just thrown at them. Okay, just people, just VCs of all sorts. I mean, blue money was everywhere, and these companies kind of got, they started to believe the headlines. They started to kind of fall prey to this cycle that eventually would be their undoing, other than the true companies that were the real survivors that would show up and be, the Ciscos, the Salesforces, the Amazons that came out of that. And I think that's the thing I'm concerned with right now, is we've got all these crypto companies in that very position.
Yeah.
Is XRP, as they call it, the chosen one, going to be one of those? If you look at Brad and his team and the Ripple team to a certain extent, there's a lot of connectivity here to what the current administration is. Can you talk to that as far as the current administration and the connection with Ripple right now?
Where attention goes, energy follows. You can apply that to anything you do in life. And I think what we're seeing with the United States government right now is that the Ripple team and the Project XRP continue to be in the most important conversations.
Yeah.
Now, we're allowed to speculate on what that may mean, but what I can focus on for sure is that just 12 months ago, not only were we not allowed in the room, we were ridiculed, we were cast out, and they gave us a dunce hat. Now, we didn't put the dunce hat on. We threw that thing to the sidelines. We said, we're legitimate crypto investors. We'll be in that room eventually. But I think the truth of the matter is Donald Trump met with Brad Garlinghouse and Stuart Alderati on 3 separate occasions, once in the summer of 2024, once in October of 2024, and then after the election cycle occurred in January of 2025. That speaks volumes. Now, during that time, the SEC lawsuit was still ongoing, and there was a lot of speculation about, are they talking about the lawsuit? Are they talking about the war on crypto? I took a completely different approach, and I said, through my investigative journalism, I believe they are focused on the treasury market. And I think they're focused on the modernization of settlement systems inside the United States. Yeah. You said it earlier, SWIFT does $5 to $7 trillion a day. The amount of demand for US treasury bonds that can happen through these stablecoins, as well as the amount of money saved through the upgrading into these modern settlement systems, the writing is on the wall. And here's my bold prediction I'll give on the Paul Barron Network, is I think it's all said and done before 2028. I think that we're in a speculative onboarding process right now. By the year 26, 27, and eventually 2028, we're not going to be speculating about what these projects are doing. We're going to be talking about the onboarding process that occurred during the entire Trump administration. So my belief is, yes, Ripple is that Amazon, that Apple company when it comes to the evolution of crypto.
Well, as we're recording here, Abs, big news. You saw it, I'm sure, over on the side of your screen, yep, flashing. And that is the Fed has come in and said, hey, current situation suggest current conditions may warrant interest rate cuts. Imagine that, an interest rate cut. After I've been screaming about this, and actually everybody made fun of me when I said we should be cutting in July. And I'm like, July is the time we're going to have these terrible, public companies come in with these ridiculous bad quarters. Walmart just came in with a terrible quarter. You're going to see job losses raise. We're going to see corrected numbers coming out of the BLS. And sure enough, yeah, all those things have happened. And now let's look at the Bitcoin chart just for a minute, just to have a grin and a giggle on this one. This is what I'm talking about. Attention right here. Look at that. You get one statement from a Fed and you get an up candle coming from 112 off the canvas. And it's like Apollo Creed rises from the floor. And somehow it's at 116 again this morning in a matter of 10 minutes. This is what I'm talking about, Abs. This is what I'm talking about.
And I think as a longtime crypto investor, I wish I could say I'm surprised, Paul, but it comes back to our initial conversation where people will overestimate these negative catalysts. The market's going to zero. We're in a bear market. Yeah. It was in January of 2023 that Bitcoin was only $16,000. That is 2.5 years ago today. Unbelievable what this asset class can do. And that's why I constantly tell people, don't overemphasize the short term. Don't focus too much on these short-term headlines. These assets are built to go up and to the right, whether you're an XRP investor, whether you're a Bitcoin investor, or whether you're just getting into this asset class and you're speculating on some of these other projects like a Hedera, like a Sui, like an AVAX, like a Chainlink. Yeah. These are all other projects that I talk about and I believe will be successful. So this is more evidence of that. looking at the XRP price chart, I've been in this project, like I've said, since 2019, and it just did what it's always done.
Yeah.
We get a wick down. Crypto investors are fearful, and they're telling you, we're at 290, we're going to 270. We're at 270, we're going to 250. We promote the narrative. You buy the red days and you take profit on the green days.
Simple.
You never sell the red days. And you know what taught me this better than any other lesson that I could have asked for was COVID-19 back in 2020. When we had that huge market collapse, I was able to purchase some of these assets at prices you couldn't even imagine. I mean, Bitcoin was $3,500 at the time.
Yeah.
So these, and I know yesterday wasn't quite the opportunity of a C19 crisis, but the premise is the same, that when you see these markets pull back, that is an opportunity for newer investors, not a time to be fearful.
Here's what I don't understand, Abs. Maybe you can clarify it for me. Why does Ripple not get out there and push this stablecoin like Circle does? Jeremy Allaire is out there every day pushing USDC like crazy. What do you think is holding them back?
I think it's for the institutions. I think what we're witnessing is a lot of those important conversations that Jeremy Allaire is maybe having on these public platforms. I think Ripple leadership is doing behind the scenes. And if you track where these company executives are going, whether it's Monica Long, who's the president, Brad Garlinghouse, who's the CEO, these people are getting in the room. They're not getting in the room with guys like myself, right? They're not getting in the room with some of these smaller companies, or they are going after the biggest market on the planet, and that is the central banks. And I think that this stablecoin was built for institutional adoption in a way that maybe USDC is going through a process of onboarding regular people. Ripple is going through that same process of onboarding institutions. And you brought up the Athena coin. Here's what gets me excited. For anybody who doesn't know this, the RLUSD stablecoin burns a small amount of XRP on every transaction. That's a very minimal amount. It's about a singular drop of XRP. The premise works in our favor because it is a deflationary asset. As more stablecoins are launched on the XRP ledger, we're not only going to see the deflationary asset increase, we're going to see the demand for the underlying asset and XRP increase.
Bingo. Well, the funny thing is that, you know, and this is the narrative that I think, here's the thing. Does it feel sometimes like this is just too good to be true? I mean, because I'm a business guy. I've seen really good times and I've seen really bad times. Okay. And you kind of recognize the really good times and you almost have to wonder what is going to happen that's going to screw this up? And it's like that imposter syndrome that everybody talks about. You look at the growth that we've seen, and here's the indicator that always gives me pause is when my investment advisor friends start calling me and asking me about assets that probably are not even ones that I would say, hey, yeah, you should go into that. No, they're asking me about assets that I'm like, wait a minute, what? What asset did you tell me? Well, okay, no, you do not invest in that. That is not one of them.
I've had similar experiences too, and I'm sure you felt this where you've done a show every day for several years, and then you go through these bull markets and people say, how come we never talked about that? And I'm like, not only did we talk about it, it's on camera, documented right here. So I think for newer investors, what I would say about there's going to be a bear market. I got to put this out there because there's going to be a super cycle. We believe this. We're headed into this massive euphoric moment for the crypto market, but there will be a catalyst on the back end. And even if you believe XRP goes to $100, well, the data tells us every single bear market, these assets pull back 90%. I would like to outline very briefly, Paul, a case where that changes here in this bear market.
Okay.
My belief is that we are going to see these assets peak around January to December of 2025. And let's throw out some hypothetical price targets where XRP goes to $10 and we'll call Bitcoin 200 grand, just so it's very simple for people to understand. Well, traditionally, we would see Bitcoin pull back about 65, 70%, taking us to about $80,000. And we'd see an asset like XRP pull back 85, 90%, taking us to $1.50 or $1. What I think is different this time is that there's a handful, maybe 24 real blockchain companies that are building and developing assets that will be here in a bull market or a bear market. And I think the headline that you just read illustrates that as properly as it could be illustrated, where there's going to be projects like Hedera, there's going to be projects like XRP that maybe they go through the bear market process, they get pulled down with some of these other assets, but the decoupling event that we've heard time and time again for some of these altcoins, it will happen in a bear market, in my opinion, because while some of these projects, let's throw out Litecoin. I'm not sure how you feel about that particular project. Let's say Litecoin goes down 85, 90%. Well, a project like XRP is going to have this institutional demand right underneath it, holding us above level. So my prediction is maybe an asset like XRP depreciates 50, 60%, but it's not going to be that 90% pullback that we've seen time and time again.
Well, and this is the narrative that I've been kind of championing for a while is that this cycle system will be broken once that we have a handful of things, and all those handful of things occurred. Institutional adoption, regulatory alignment, and the key one, which I believe is the component of nation states starting to truly look at this as an asset class.
Right.
Because once you have all those things done, you've got institutions, the government, and countries. You have now a next generation asset class. Now, albeit it's brand new. Sure, it's going to be like the internet was. There's going to be a lot of steps and stumbles along the way. But for the most part, you're going to see a class that starts to stabilize. So my question to you, is this the last real bull market for crypto?
Here's what I think. My belief is that Bitcoin will move on these liquidity waves, and it drives the momentum of the market. But when you talk about projects like you've just discussed, like the XRPs, even the Cardanos, the AVAXs, the Chainlinks, these top 10, 25 projects that are building and developing, my answer is no. I don't think we're going to be holding to these 4-year cycles forever. I don't think the market is structured to be that way. And here's another piece of evidence I would throw your direction. And you can let me know what you think about this as well, is that when these ETF products are turned on, you had a great interview, and the name is slipping me, but the person on your show last week predicted $5 billion in the first 4 weeks for the XRP inflow. And shout out to him for that great analysis. I played it on my show. But I think this is going to apply to a lot of legitimate projects. And I think that when these inflows are turned on from Wall Street into the blockchain space, it's $5 billion this year, it's $10 billion next year, it's $15 billion the year after that. These inflows are almost perpetually turned on, and they don't exist today. So I think you apply this concept, including the stablecoins, including the onboarding of tokenized assets.
Right.
This asset class is going to evolve dramatically. And I really believe people are underestimating how different crypto is going to be in just a couple of years.
Yeah, and it's like the technology shift that has occurred. All the cycles that you needed to really compare crypto to have already happened. You could compare it to media and the internet and mobile, even gaming to a certain extent. The cycles, because it is a human nature. All right. And investing is going to be a human nature. We're going to see that occur. And the point now, I think, is knowing where to watch in the essence of where that growth is going to occur. Because there are going to be some losers. There will be some losers. Hopefully, you guys watching and listening right now are going to pick the right ones. So keep watching Abs and myself on this very topic, because this is going to be a big deal. I know you got to run. And man, I feel like this is probably a 3-hour podcast that we should be doing, because there is so much to talk about, Abs. I'm going to have you back on the show. I have another 15 questions I want to ask you. This is like, we'll call this part one of the Abs and PB podcast here today. So it's been great having you. Listen, good luck out there on Good Evening and Good Morning Crypto. We're watching and we're listening, and we're thanking you for all your hard work. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Paul. You set a standard for the industry. We're trying to walk in your footsteps. And what I would say is I'm looking forward to part 2. So thank you so much. And
let's do it.
Paul, have a great day. If you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, subscribe to the brand new channel, and leave a comment underneath the video. We'll see you all in the next one.